direct them to. So I've started the recording. And I'll introduce myself. I'm Amy Birch. I'm a traffic engineer and consultant that works with NDOT to carry out the traffic calming program. And so we work hand in hand with the NDOT traffic engineers to manage this program and work with neighbors to bring the traffic calming to the streets that have been selected. So also on the call, I believe we have Liz Tufnell, also a consultant and traffic engineer with Kimley Horn, and I'm with Birch Transportation. So we're here to talk about the Hamilton Avenue traffic calming project. And hopefully many of you are already familiar with traffic calming and how this program works, but we're going to go over all the details of the process and everything in the plan. But congrats on being selected. It's a pretty popular program, and we'll go through some of those things. But thanks for joining, and feel free to use the chat box. And if you have any questions, you can also unmute yourself and ask those, and we'll try to answer them. So, what is traffic calming? So the traffic calming program is really focused on residential streets, and what we do is install physical solutions to encourage lower speeds over long distances of streets. And we're really focused on speed reduction, and these are really only applicable to residential streets. So the 3 E's of traffic calming are education, enforcement, and engineering. But engineering is really where this program lies, and that's what we'll primarily be addressing with the traffic calming program for Hamilton Avenue. So safety and vision zero is really the high points of what we're looking at with traffic calming, because this, as this chart shows, it's very speed is really correlated with survivability of a pedestrian when they are struck by a vehicle. So at 25 miles per hour, a pedestrian has an 89% chance of survival. And then as the speed increases, that chance of survival decreases dramatically. So that's one of the points that we are trying to make with lowering speeding on residential streets through this program. So like I said, this neighborhood street program is very popular. As of our last round of selections for applications, we had 464 neighborhood streets that had requested traffic calming in the city of Nashville. The NDOT selects about 25 streets for traffic calming every 6 months or so, so 50 a year. So Hamilton Avenue is one of 26 neighborhood streets that was selected in this round of traffic calming selection that was announced for winter 2023. This map on the right that you see is highlighting the streets that have requested traffic calming. And this is a live map. It's found on the traffic calming website, so you can go in and look and see what streets maybe in your neighborhood that have requested traffic calming and which streets have been selected and kind of the status of those projects. So how did we get from 464 streets that are asking for traffic calming to that 26 streets that were selected? We have a data-driven prioritization process that we go through every round of selection to identify the streets that have the greatest need. So we look at several criteria. Primarily vehicular speeds makes up a big percentage of that. This is based on a 100-point scale. So we look at that we go out and measure the speed, and that makes up about 45% of the score. Then we also look at volume, and that's the daily traffic on the street. Then we're also looking at trip destination. So is the street close to parks and schools and places where pedestrians from the residential area be expected to walk We also look at non-driver accommodations, and that's are there sidewalks or not? But no sidewalk gets a higher score, of course. And then also presence of bikeways and transit routes and transit stops near or along the street. And another 10% of the score is based on history of pedestrian injury or fatalities on the street. So we pull all this data together, and the streets that are at the top of the scoring are the ones that were selected. So Hamilton Avenue, the street that was selected was Hamilton between 8th Avenue South and Martin Street. Hamilton between Martin and Rains has already been selected, and traffic calming project moving forward and being implemented right now as we speak. But so this section is the selected street we're talking about this evening. So it's a local street. We measured the speeds at the 85th percentile speed at 32 miles per hour. So the 85th percentile speed is the speed that 85% of the traffic that we counted is going that speed or below. It means that 15% of the traffic on the day that we measured was going above 32 miles per hour. Excuse me. And then just the daily traffic volume that we measured was just over 3,000 cars a day. That's combined of both directions. And the street width kind of varies along the length of the street. It's there's obviously some construction going on the street, but also just in general, the width of the street varies. And there's obviously sidewalk gaps along certain parts of the street. So that's just some quick data points about Hamilton Avenue. And here's a map showing the length of street we're talking about between 8th Avenue and Martin Street. We have a question. Do I have the percentile over 25 miles per hour? I do not have that offhand. I can get that information. So now that's the street we're talking about. And let's talk about what's in our toolbox for the program. Speed cushions are our kind of bread and butter in this program. We do this on a lot of streets because we find that they're very effective and they're easy to implement. They have some limitations, of course, but these are rubber devices that you've seen installed. You're probably very familiar now that they're being installed on many streets in your neighborhood. But they're rubber devices that are fit together in various lengths, so that and also they have the gaps that allow the emergency vehicles to have a lesser impact as they travel over them. So this picture on the bottom left is showing kind of a profile view of a 10-foot long, 10.5-foot long speed cushion. So it has that flat section in the middle, and so they're 10.5 feet long and they're 6 feet wide, and it's 3 inches high. The picture on the top left shows that we are including warning signage with these devices to make sure that drivers are aware as they approach the device. And they also have markings on them, and those may vary depending on what the striping on of the street is. So they may have center line on them if they're installed on the center line, or these white arrows to show the direction of travel over them. We also do speed tables on occasion on certain types of streets, but these are typically longer devices, and they don't have the gaps for the emergency vehicle response to kind of straddle those like the cushions do. And they're also modular and just drilled into the pavement. And they will extend like the full length of or width of the street, excuse me. So recently, NDOT's been collecting some data on these vertical measures, and specifically on the types of cushions that have been installed in Wedgwood, Houston. Those are the 6-foot wide and 7-foot long cushions. And what we're seeing is they're very effective in our goals to reduce speeding on residential streets. So I believe this is a average of a few locations where we've measured the before and after, and you can see the average speed has decreased from 31 miles per hour to 22 miles per hour, which is really great. And then the 85th percentile speed that I talked about earlier has been on average reduced from 37 miles per hour to 25 miles per hour, which is what we're looking for on residential streets for the most part, especially in the urban services district. The posted speed limit on residential streets is 25, and that's the case for Hamilton. So as you can see, these are really effective. We also, in our toolbox, have radar feedback signs. You can see in these pictures, these signs that are typically posted with a speed limit sign, and they will flash and show your speed as you approach. The data collected that NDOT has shown that they are effective in reducing speeds, and still effective even, a few months after the installation. So we're hoping that effect is maintained. But these are less intrusive devices that we might use in places where speed cushions and physical devices in the roadway are not applicable. So that's another tool that we have in our box. We also do some pavement narrowing with pavement markings. Just sometimes if a road has been constructed that's wider than necessary, we can narrow the travel way by installing white edge lines or center lines or a combination of those. Traffic circles. This picture is showing a rubberized installation of traffic circles. These are circles installed in the middle of an intersection, usually a four-legged intersection, and are navigated like a roundabout, such that you drive counterclockwise around them. They are only really applicable in certain types of intersections, and we do have some things we need to look at as far as other larger vehicles being able to navigate through the intersection. So we don't do these as often, but they are still in our toolbox. We also are doing bulb outs and chicanes with some pavement markings and treatments. The picture on the left is showing just narrowing an intersection with striped paint and installing some flexible delineators to kind of create a physical barrier as well. And this is useful in large intersections where we just have excess pavement width and want to narrow the crossing distance and just constrain vehicles a little bit more and give a narrower view as you go through an intersection. And then the chicanes are the pictures on the right where we can create kind of curvature on a straight road, essentially. So I think the picture on the top is Kenner Avenue out in West Nashville, and the picture on the bottom is maybe Fairfax, I believe. And so it's just done with pavement markings and essentially shifting lanes from side to side, which in order to stay in the lane requires vehicles and drivers to slow down and drive slower. And chicanes are not all, certain types of situations we can do chicanes, but it has to be, the right width and so forth. So those are our tools in our toolbox for traffic calming. And outside of our program, there's the Hub Nashville. Hopefully you're all familiar with the Hub. It's a great way to make service requests, maintenance issues, request new signs and signals, issues that you may be having with stormwater as far as like clogged storm inlets and things like that, that's a great place to reach Metro, and it gets the information to the right department, the right person to help resolve or answer your questions. And so that's call 311 or use the app. There's an app. Related to the walk and bike program, Anna Dearman is the walk and bike manager with NDOT, and she's a great resource if you have questions about sidewalks and bike lanes and things like that. We also have contact JD Lane with the Beautification Commission, with organizing neighborhood cleanups and street cleanups, things like that. So I'm going to jump in and talk about the proposed traffic calming measures for Hamilton. This is our concept that we'd like to show to you all and get some feedback. But you know, knowing the other installations that are ongoing or recently installed in the Wedgwood Houston neighborhood, we would see that carrying that type of installation through the rest of Hamilton between Martin and 8th Avenue would be a good good solution. So we've shown a few sets of speed cushions to be installed. First one between 8th and Ridley, another one between Fort Negley, or two sets between Fort Negley and Hagen, and another one between Hagen and Martin. So these would likely be sets of 3, similar to those that have been installed already on Hamilton, based on the width of the street. And then in addition to that, these 2 intersections on Hamilton at Ridley and at Fort Negley Boulevard are really wide intersections. And so we are proposing to add some pavement striping to narrow those intersections with painted bulb outs and delineation. That would just kind of constrain vehicles and keep that slower speed throughout the length of the street is what we're aiming to do there. So that would flip to the next page. These are the pictures of the examples of those two treatments that we would look to incorporate. So I'll flip back here to this picture, and I see a question come in. It says, the one is right in front of the new development at 700 Hamilton. Am I crazy to think they had Hamilton access? Let's see.
Yeah, I thought that new building that's going in there was going to build up all the way onto Hamilton, and that was going to be their entrance.
Is that the one under construction now?
Yeah.
You can see my mouse.
Yeah, right there.
This area. Okay. Yeah. We will. Is that me? We'll look into that. When we're looking to place these, you know, we're trying to be 15 to 20 feet away from driveways, so we can kind of work with that plan as we make that.
Similarly, where that 4th C on the right is right in front of my driveway. If there's a way to not have that happen, I would personally appreciate that.
So, right. When we place these, you know, the symbols on the map are not exactly perfect as far as to scale on this concept, but as we refine the design and get more details with the measurements and dimensioning, we'll be looking for spacing between the device and the driveway. And so our goal is 15 feet away from a driveway, which would allow you to be able to turn in and out of your driveway without necessarily backing over it and so forth.
I guess my question kind of relates to the same thing. The speed cushion right next to the stop sign. I know it's technically not right next to it, but it seems close. Like, why do you need that one there? I don't know, it just seems close to the stop sign.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So you're talking about the one.
The one in front of the, yep, that one right there. It almost seems like you could spread out the other two and yeah, and eliminate one.
Mm-hmm. We typically put these in spacings of anywhere from 300 to 600 feet of spacing. So that's kind of what we were trying to achieve between 8th to Martin. But if it's desired not to have as many, we can look at that.
I just think from my and other people I know on the call obviously live in the neighborhood as well and
Mhm.
can certainly speak to what's I guess been going on with the ones that have been installed. But you know, like Rains has two, and I feel like it's working well. And they
Mhm.
seem to be spaced pretty far apart. You know, I guess Martin's kind of the same way between the stretch that I take most often. There's two there, and I feel like it helps the speed overall, and actually people being able to get in and out of different streets, things like that. So I guess I just, you know, they seem to be working, and there don't seem to be a bunch. And so
Mhm.
that's the only reason I'm asking about the third is that the stretches of the other longer roads seem to be pretty successful with the two so far.
Mm-hmm. Sure. That's good feedback. We
So,
can, we can
I
look at
mean, one
that.
thing that would be nice about that one is it would kind of force people, if they're at that new development, to go towards 8th Avenue instead of trying to go through the neighborhood. If that one is moved towards the right side of their entrance. So I think, and I see
Mm-hmm.
Shay saying it too. I kind of agree with them. The more cushions, the better. And they really do help.
Right. And so, with moving that one to the east, closer to the railroad overpass, we run into being too close to that driveway for that
Industrial building on the south.
industrial building on the south side. Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, these are details we can look more closely at as we refine the plan. We also can't install them directly on the bridge. So that gives us some limitation. I think when I was laying this out, the goal was just to try to keep a consistent speed along the length, you know, and put them at a kind of consistent rate. Recognizing that at the stop sign, everyone is stopping at the stop sign. And then if they don't get an opportunity to pick up speed before they get more into the residential piece of the part of the street, then that would be better than to allow them to speed between.
Uh, Hi, I'm Vince. I live on the 600 block north side of Hamilton, right where the fourth C is, the easternmost C. Combination frustration slash safety concern slash everything for the last 6 to 18 months. Hagen and Hamilton has just been under massive development, and it feels like a major free for all right now, where all of the developers and construction workers park on the side of the street, they take over lanes, and one, there's just no traffic control, which is unsafe. Two, we don't have sidewalks there. So like if I leave my house in any direction, back alley, east or west, I'm not on a sidewalk. And to have a 2-lane road there, one in each direction, with one being blocked off all the time means tons of backed up traffic. And Hagen southbound is up a huge hill with all of the parking on the north and south side of the 700 block of Hamilton. It's just incredibly dangerous. There's no protection. And like now, if I were to go outside, people accelerate from that second C all the way down to Martin. And, you know, if you were to put a cushion there, that's great. But between, excuse me, between cushion C and cushion, I'm sorry, cushion 3 and cushion 4 going west to east, um, It's just really unsafe. And they're putting a bunch of apartments on the south side and the north side when it was the old neighborhood 15 years ago and there's only 11 houses on the road. It was great. But if we're putting another 600 people right in that 4-block radius to each direction, I don't think not having a stop sign there is an option. There's 4 parking garages, 2 to the south, 1 or 2 to the north, 1 to the south. It's just going to get backed up. It's going to be crazy, and it's really unsafe. I would say way more unsafe than Fort Negley in Hamilton and Ridley in Hamilton. No one's going north and south on those roads on a regular basis. Everyone's going east-west on Hamilton and going to Hayden towards Chestnut, in my opinion. So of the 1, 2, 3, 4 intersections that we have there, I feel like Hagen personally should be the most looked at for a stop sign. Because I'm surrounded by it. It's really unsafe. I hate leaving my house. And with the lack of respect from developers honoring parking and all of these different codes, and there's nothing we can do to stop it. It's just a free-for-all right now, and it kind of sucks.
And Vince, the Queens East, there's going to be hundreds of people pulling out of that one. That a stop sign would make them, say taking a left or going straight on Hagen safer.
So
yeah.
Let me jump in here and say that you probably noticed that we didn't talk about stop signs in our toolbox. So we don't use stop signs for traffic calming measures. Those, can be looked at by the department for requests for stop signs, but that would go through the hub. I'd recommend you put in a request through the hub, but we don't use stop signs or always stops for traffic calming measures. And related to the development, I'm not sure if that was studied with that development, but that would be the avenue that I would recommend is that you check
If
in
I
there.
remember correctly, and please correct me if I'm wrong, if I am to submit the request for a stop sign, didn't I need to have like an organization or someone sponsor the request? I don't think it's just as easy as me as a resident. Am I wrong?
No, you can, as a resident, you can
Okay.
make a request. It's not as easy as, you request it and that gets installed.
Yeah, of course.
But
I understand that.
it becomes kind of a study that NDOT traffic engineers would look at and do. And then it would still also go through the Traffic and Parking Commission. And I see Councilmember Sledge is on with us and has his hand raised. I'm not sure if he wanted to say something.
Maybe he's just giving everyone a high five.
But
He's
yes,
working on his mic.
that's the best way to do it.
Okay. I mean, again, incredibly biased opinion. I feel like getting a stop sign at that intersection saves a lot of the need for cushion 3 and 4. Because as I've experienced, guilty as charged, going south on Martin, those 3 cushions slow me down, but people just accelerate between them nonstop. So like if you were to put, I know stop signs aren't your thing, but cushions help, but I think a stop sign would drastically help more than 2 cushions on the east and west of it. So I'll submit it via hub.
Can y'all hear me now?
I agree
Yep.
with you, Vince.
Okay, cool.
Yes, I
Thanks.
can.
Sorry, I had the wrong setting on my microphone. To let folks know, Dana's kind of getting at what I was about to say. I actually talked to Director Alarcon about that intersection specifically. We drove that intersection, and we've talked about doing something additional there. Even to the, I mean, we talked going all the way to like signalization. So I don't have a full answer from her yet on that, but I know that she was going to be looking at it, and I actually have to jump off because I have to call her back on something else. So I will request that when I call her and see if there's been any additional info there. I don't know if maybe Brad or somebody has looked at that.
Thank you, Councilman Sledge.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right. So, what I'm hearing is, maybe we should look at how many cushions. There might be some separate ongoing study of the intersection of Hamilton and Hagen that wouldn't necessarily change how I think we would look at this plan, whether it became a stop, always stop or not. It might affect, positioning of cushions, but at any rate,
I can't speak for everyone on here, but I've spoken with many people. This is a great fix for where we are right now, in my opinion. This doesn't seem to take into account the thousands of people that are going to be moving into the area that we're looking at in this map in the next year or two. So, if everything were put pause, this would be great. But I think with the amount of growth that we're experiencing in this neighborhood, to me, it feels like not enough, or not safe, or maybe putting a Band-Aid on a bigger problem, which I know is not NDOT's problem. But my opinion is this is great, but we're growing exponentially, and this doesn't seem to actually help. It just slows down the people that are using our neighborhood as a bypass right now, not the people that are actually going to be living here.
well, as you said, there's development happening and more residential being built in this area. And I think the way we look at it is let's calm the street now so that when those new residents are there, they are driving at the slower speed that is expected on the residential street, and not speeding to get home and so forth. So, I don't know that this plan would really impact those new residences. To me, it's kind of a preemptive thing. But yes, you've been selected not because of new development
Right.
being developed or any of that or new residents coming in. It's about the speed and the condition and characteristics of the street now. So,
do you have any say into street parking? Is that in your world as well?
we don't really do much with street parking and except for, if there was a scenario where we might implement a chicane, and we would alternate the parking on back and forth
Yeah.
along the length of the street, then that would come up.
So again, just because it's literally right outside my house, I rented on Sweetbriar over in Belmont Hillsborough, and it's a chicane. There's a lot of street parking in the 600 block of Hamilton, and it's on both sides of the street with a 2-lane road that doesn't have a sidewalk. The speed cushions will be nice, but it still doesn't change the fact that there could be 4 cars in one section unsafely. So I can't speak for the entire neighborhood, but I know most of our neighbors, and we're not necessarily happy with that. So, even if you picked half of the block to park on the north side and half of the block to park on the south side, where it's only a 2-lane with no sidewalk, which again, right outside my house, I feel like that would also help. Because it's the Wild West for parking right now.
We can look at that.
That's cool. You don't have to do anything. I'm just voicing my opinion. That's why I'm here.
Parking for residential property is obviously a premium. So we do take that into consideration. But at least on the section between Hagen and Martin, there appears to be a lot of driveways. So
so like I can park in my driveway, and I'm super thankful for that. But if other people are parking anywhere, it ends up on the street. And that could be lawn maintenance, lawn care, FedEx, UPS, any of that stuff. Our streets not set up for 3 cars to, 2 going one way or parked or whatever. It's just, I know it's only my specific block. I know that, but also it's my specific block.
Yeah. So one thing with parking though does kind of give some traffic calming, because when you do have parking on both sides of the street, it sort of becomes this yield flow condition. So traffic has to slow down in order to negotiate through when oncoming traffic is coming. So it does have a traffic calming effect when we have some on-street parking as well.
Yeah, I wish that were my experience, but it doesn't seem
Yeah,
to be
gotcha.
on my couple blocks right now.
Can you
So
go, sorry to pivot there. Can you go into more about the bulb outs?
Yes. So one comment here says, please no curbs. So that's not what we're talking about with the bulb outs. We're talking about using paint to tighten the radii of an intersection. There's not crosswalks at these intersections that we're talking about, but essentially it would narrow the crossing distance for pedestrians crossing at the intersection. So it's a treatment similar to this on the left, which just has some edge line striping and channelized hatch striping through the intersection. And we would probably, given these intersections are so big, we would probably do it on all four corners. So it would just really create a change in the visual of the intersection as you're passing through it. But we're not talking about changing the physical curb line or drainage or any of that.
I guess I did see Dwayne had a comment too. If we could in the future kind of harden it, maybe planters and other some beautification money that's out there, if that's something that we can kind of build into the design. But also, are we able to paint crosswalks if they're not there with this?
I can speak with the engineers at NDOT. It depends on the curb ramps and presence of curb ramps. I believe there are curb ramps there, so it might be something that could be done. It's not doesn't fall directly within the traffic calming program, but we can talk with the traffic engineers about that, I believe. Separately, or you can put in a hub request, and that might actually get done faster if it's agreeable.
On the bulb outs there, I guess I'm looking at an aerial map, and with the bulb out, like at each of those intersections, there's either a bike lane like on Fort Negley that you would use to turn onto Hamilton, or there's a turn lane with a shared bike lane. You have to zoom in on like Google Maps.
Yeah.
I guess I'm having trouble picturing the bulb out in application on those two sides without interrupting the turn lane or the bike lane. I get it.
Yeah.
I get it on the other two legs.
Yeah, we would not interrupt. So it might tie in tighter to not interfere with the bike lane. So it might just be on the Hamilton part that we would pinch.
Because like on Hamilton turning, right onto Fort Negley from the neighborhood, you almost could paint that as that would be a bike lane. It then becomes
Turn
a
into a
dedicated
bike lane.
Yeah, the bike lane is already there, and it's almost like you could put the bulb out to create that separation to get to the shared or to the dedicated bike lane.
Yeah, we would work out those details as we move along. This is, conceptual, just to give the ideas of what we're thinking about, but we actually come in and put CAD plans together and have, dimensions and such, and would have more detail about what that looks like at our second meeting. We would present that at the second meeting. And I might jump in on process, unless there's any more questions about.
And well, I guess I do have one more question. That intersection, Hamilton and Fort Negley, that's not big enough to do a circle?
The some of the criteria that we need for the circles is really, we need to accommodate the types of vehicles that travel through there. And particularly this area still has some truck traffic, industrial traffic. So we would be looking at that. So we don't want them to have to mount the device in order to navigate through the intersection or make turns.
These aren't the ones that kind of taper down, so that way they can, if they make a turn, they go up a little on there.
Right, but we'll look at it.
Okay.
We'll look
These
at
trucks are mounting every curb at every corner. So I like, that's a nice gesture, but I mean, they're driving in people's yards, turning north onto Martin off of Wedgwood.
Mhm.
They're hitting the curb outside the bank on 8th Avenue, taking a right on the Hamilton. But they don't care.
Yep. Well, that's good feedback for us. You might be interested in that. We can look more specifically at whether that would fit and work
I guess
for
one thing
these intersections.
when I know you're about to talk about process, but you know, Vince has some very excellent points and he's correct about all of it. Is there, like, when you talk about process, I know this is just traffic calming, but how do we attach these other things to this in one, way, shape, or form? It's like, okay, if this is step one, how do we attach step 2, 3, 4, 5 that gets it to where it really needs to be?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I would recommend reaching out to the hub to make requests for things like not sidewalks, sidewalks too, but crosswalks and stop signs. Those fall under more traffic engineering and not this traffic calming program. And I think there's a question here about how will the large trucks carrying the equipment from Summit make those turns with the bulb outs? That'll be part of what we're vetting out in a more detailed design plan. But in general, they should be able to navigate through it, or we can design around it to adjust that. So I'll go now into our program and just kind of so we can get into next steps. But as you're aware, probably this program is an application process. So residents apply for traffic calming. There's 2 windows to apply per year. We just closed one at the end of March for the next round of prioritization and selection. So we take those streets that have requested traffic calming, then we do the data collection that's needed and do our prioritization model and make the selection based on budget that's been allocated by council, and make the selection of streets. So right now we're doing about 25 per cycle. So your street's one of those streets. And we're doing meeting 1 right now, which is where we present the program and our concept. And then we take the feedback that we've heard and refine the design. And then we'll let you know when we're ready to do meeting 2. And we will again send postcard mailers to let everyone know about when the meeting is. We'll present that final design plan and talk about the next steps, which is the online ballot portion. This is how the program ensures that there's support on those property owners on the street for the traffic calming plan that's presented. So there's another mailer that would go out to all the property owners that have a property line along the length of the affected street. And then there's a 6-week window where Those property owners get an opportunity to vote for or against the plan as presented. And if if 66% of the votes are favorable, then the project moves forward into the construction phase. So it's 66% of votes that come in need to be in favor. It's not necessarily 66% of the properties along the length of the street. I want to make sure that's clear. So those ballot cards.
Who's voting on this? Is it just neighbors?
Property.
Is like a private election type thing?
Yes, it's property owners. So all the property owners for the properties along the length of the street from 8th to Martin, and it's residential property owners as well as nonprofits like churches and metro schools, but we don't have that scenario here.
Would all of the developers that are building like 300 apartments have say in that? Is it individual tenants or is it the developers, landowners?
Yeah, good question. It's property owners for individual properties. So if on the parcel map, on the official metro parcel map, if the property is owned, it might have 300 multifamily development, but if it only has, one owner, then it's one vote.
Got it. Thank you.
Mhm. So on those cards, that would go out with the ballot info. It has a QR code to take you to the online ballot. There's a unique ID associated with each property, and that's on the card. So we make sure we don't have double voting and that sort of thing. And then there's also a phone number. So if there's someone that receives their ballot card and they don't have access to internet or can't vote online for some reason, there's a phone number to Gil Thomas, who is the NDOT program manager, and he will help them vote in the process. So the votes are tallied at the end of 6 weeks, and that information is shared, not the individual votes, but just the results of the votes. And then we move forward into construction. So NDOT would then, if the project moves forward, NDOT would then order the materials and move forward with install, and that takes 4 to 6 months, I believe, to get it installed after the voting closes. So I have Gil's contact information here. He's very helpful in answering questions, and also gives updates to council member and the neighborhood contact regarding the results of the ballot before it closes. So you kind of have an idea if you need to do a neighborhood push to get it out there. But we'll go over more ballot info at the second meeting when we present a more detailed plan. Then my information is here as well. I have some socials for NDOT if you're interested in following NDOT, and this QR code and takes you to the website below, which is the traffic calming website for NDOT. So let's see, I'm gonna scroll through some of these questions, see if I've missed anything. Let's see. Does anybody have any other questions?
Would you mind going back one slide so I could get your and Gil's info, please?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
Mm-hmm. Dwayne, I missed your question about the bulb outs, but I think we've answered that through this discussion. We're only doing paint through this program. paint and flexible delineators like you see along some of the bikeways in Nashville. Okay, I think I got them all. Okay, so I don't want to keep anyone. Just put this plan back up if there's any other questions. But I think there's, discussion amongst you all about, whether want to move forward with cushions or we heard maybe look at alternating parking for a chicane, looking into a traffic circle for these intersections, or being very specific about how the bulb outs would work in order not to interfere with bike lanes. But that's what I'm hearing. And also, we need to look into the plan specifically, or the development plan for this parcel between Fort Negley and the railroad.
I don't know if you saw up at the very beginning of the chat, the fourth message, Colby typed in a link, and it's got a picture of it, and it definitely does exit southbound on Hamilton.
Yeah, I looked up the other one, the one at the corner of Hagen and Hamilton, and then the one that the other one's on that's really on, I think that's Moore, that comes out onto Hagen as well. That's under construction. I don't think it's finished.
Yeah, so Hagen south of Hamilton is going to be a dead end into a parking garage on the west. What we are discussing is on the west side of the tracks, exactly.
Yep. Right there.
And I think they're building more townhomes on the east side of the tracks right there too. But yeah, that whole south of Hamilton, west of Hagen is just a bunch of apartments with a huge parking garage. And then right where your second C is to the north side is going to be the same thing. So if I'm a
one, the raised crosswalk across Hagen, like over Hamilton down to Hagen, where it's the pedestrian walkway, that would be really cool if that's an option.
We don't have a walkway there right now. I would love that.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's part of that plan for Queens, is it's going to be a walkway that you can come through on Moore. It's pedestrian only to go down towards that. If that's where there was a raised crosswalk, if we use one of those tables as a crosswalk.
So
I mean,
I like where your head's at. I think that that's a cool idea. So the thing with these rubberized devices, there can't be specifically a crosswalk because of ADA compliance. I think that would have to be built out of concrete to make it
my personal biggest request for you, Miss Amy, would be to reanalyze possibly what that Queens lot exit looks like. Because I assume this calming research was done in the past a while ago. And just that intersection is just, pardon my language, a shit show. And it's going to get worse as more and more people move in. So if we're in between cushions, yeah, it'll slow down, but I still don't think it's going to fix the overall problem, personally.
I understand your concern. We think putting these in a series does encourage a lower speeds
Sure.
over more consistent length. So, and that's what our data shows as well, is that the 6 or 7 that we've looked at where we've installed this exact product and type of installation has brought speeds from 85th percentile speeds of 37 down to 25. And that's really what we want to see. So we do think that it would be effective. It's absolutely not going to solve all the problems with parking and more development and all that. That's, it's just part of the puzzle, part of how we get drivers to just slow down.
Yep. So our action item as residents that are still on here, which are not very many of us, is to go to Hub and request more information or request a stop sign at that particular intersection, and then any other thoughts and opinions that we have outside of speed cushions, bulb outs, or that fancy French word.
Hmm.
I think,
Great.
can we request, or you said we can request crosswalks as well on the hub?
Yes, you can.
Because it could be like, again, sorry, you got in the middle of our neighborhood discussion here, but I think it could, like on Belmont or other streets where they have the signalized like crosswalk could also, if there's a stop sign and that signal, it could help slow everything down a lot there too and be safer.
Yes, you can reach out to the hub about crosswalks and stop signs. It did sound like Councilman Sledge was in talks with NDOT, the NDOT director, as well as engineers about that specific intersection of Hagen and Hamilton. So, that may be in the works, but you can certainly put in a request as well. And then what we'll be doing is reaching out to coordinate the second meeting once we've worked up our design and kind of tweaked it and looked at these other items that we've discussed this evening. We'll put that in a more detailed CAD plan and be ready to meet with you all again and send those notices out. You would receive information about the meeting, and we can do it virtual or hybrid as well.
So if everything goes exactly to schedule, we're still 6 months out from having something installed. Is that correct?
I would think that's a very fair assessment.
Okay. That's a long time. Cool. I'm super thankful. And that's also a long time.
Yeah, I mean, it might even be longer. We got to do a little more of our design work, then schedule a meeting, which takes 2 to 3 weeks to get it out, and then the ballot is a 6-week process. So, yeah, I would say 6 months would be on the early side. I just want to be upfront.
Yeah,
with you
all we want is transparency.
Mhm.
That goes a long way, and we appreciate that very much.
But congrats on, getting selected, the rest of Hamilton into the program, and hopefully we can come up with a plan that you all as a neighborhood want to move forward, and we'll go from there.
Thank you so much for the meeting.
You're welcome. And again, this will be posted on the website, so you can check it back out or forward it to your neighbors that weren't able to attend.
Great.
Have a good evening.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you.
Yeah.